I was 70 years old when my daughter looked straight at me on Thanksgiving and said, "You're a failure." Mom, it wasn't a whisper. Sophie Turner said it the way someone announces a fact everyone has been avoiding. The fork in my hand stopped halfway to my plate. My name is Mabel Hartman, and in that moment it felt like the floor under me tilted even though I was sitting perfectly still. Sophie tapped the edge of the dish I had brought my sweet potato recipe that I have made since she was little. "This again," she said loudly. "You wonder why I never bring friends here. You never tried to be more than this." No one corrected her. Not Daniel, her husband. Not the relatives who had come in from York. Not even our teenagers at the table, Emma and Liam. The silence that followed wasn't shock. It was habit. They had heard her talk to me like this before. My throat tightened. But before I could breathe in to answer, Arthur pushed his chair back. My husband. Arthur Hartman is 72 and usually keeps his voice steady and low. But he stood so quickly, the entire line of dishes shook. Sophie's eyes snapped to him like she expected him to defend her. Instead, he leaned his hands on the table and said, "If your mother is a failure, then explain who kept your life from falling apart when you could not stand on your own." Sophie's face drained of color. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Arthur kept his eyes on her. "Every debt you hid, every overdue bill, every emergency loan, every moment you pretended you were doing it all alone. Your mother caught you every time, and you call her a failure in front of your children." The room froze along with her. Emma's lips trembled. Liam looked away. Daniel swallowed hard. My heart pounded in my ears. I felt both exposed and defended, like someone had ripped open a curtain and forced the truth into the air. That was the moment everything started to break. And if you want to understand how we reached a point where my own daughter could speak to me like that, I have to take you back to where it really began. I used to believe Sophie Turner came into this world with her hands reaching for me. When she was little, she clung to my scrubs every night I left for Lancaster General Hospital. I worked double shifts back then, and Arthur ran a small roofing business that barely kept us steady. We lived modestly, but I thought love would fill the gaps. Money could not. Sophie was sensitive, careful, always trying to get everything right. But even as a child, she watched other families the way a critic watches a play. Emily's house has a staircase that turns. She once told me, "Ours just goes up." She was 8 and already measuring worth in ways I did not understand. When she turned 13, I made a mistake I have never forgotten. I found her diary on the kitchen table and opened it without thinking. Inside, she had written, "I wish I had a prettier house and a prettier mom." The words hit me so hard I sat down before my knees gave out. I closed the diary and put it back exactly where she left it. I never told her what I saw. By 14, she wanted to apply to a private arts academy in Philadelphia. The audition sheet alone cost more than we had that month. Arthur and I tried everything: extra shifts, overtime, even selling old tools, but it wasn't enough. When the rejection letter came, Sophie barely looked at it. She looked at me. If we had money, they would have taken me. She said, "You two never gave me a chance." That sentence stayed between us like a cold draft. Years later, when she was in community college, it returned in sharper words. "You held me back. My whole life would be different if I had a real start." Even small moments changed. At a school fundraiser, I brought a tray of homemade cookies. Sophie pulled me aside, her voice low and hot. "Why would you bring those everyone else bought from bakeries? You make us look cheap." I walked back to the table holding the tray like it was suddenly too heavy to carry. It was the first time I felt the space opening between us, and it has never fully closed. What happens in a family when one person gives everything, and the other refuses to see the price? The last 10 years of my life slipped by in small, quiet decisions I never told anyone about. Not even Arthur knew the full list. It began with Sophie's car loan. She called one night, breath sharp, saying the bank was threatening repossession. Just this once. "Mom," she said, "I cannot let people at work see me taking the bus." I paid the late amount without hesitation. A year later, it was her credit card. She blamed a bookkeeping mistake. They doubled the interest for no reason. She insisted. When I hesitated, she snapped. "You know how humiliating it is to tell Daniel I messed up again. I sent the money the same night." Then came the missed mortgage payment. Sophie swallowed her pride long enough to tell me. "It was a clerical glitch. I'll fix it next month." I covered it before the notice reached her mailbox. She never mentioned it again. Not even a thank you. The worst was the medical bill she hid from Daniel. A minor procedure. Nothing dangerous. But she had refused to tell her husband she missed her insurance renewal deadline. When she showed up at my door, hands shaking, she whispered, "Please, he will think I am irresponsible." I held her while she cried, then wrote the check. The deeper twist came a few days later when Daniel found me alone outside the grocery store. He lowered his voice and said, "I know you helped. Please don't tell her I know. She does not handle embarrassment well." His eyes were tired, defeated. I nodded without asking for more. 4 months after that, my doctor recommended a biopsy for a lump he found. I rescheduled it 3 times. Sophie had called needing $3,000 for an urgent work expense. "If I do not cover this," she said, "it will ruin everything I have been building." I told myself the biopsy could wait. Lancaster is a town that watches everything. Reputation travels faster than truth. Sophie hated that our past clung to her, and I became the part of her she tried hardest to outrun. Secrets like these gather weight. They do not disappear. They wait. By the time Thanksgiving afternoon arrived, my stomach already felt tight. As if it knew something my mind was trying to push away. I reheated the dishes I had prepared and forced my hands not to shake. Sophie arrived almost an hour late. She walked through the door without a hello, peeled off her coat, and looked around like she was inspecting a hotel room she planned to review. "Mom, you still haven't replaced these curtains," she said. "And these plates, they look older than me." Arthur murmured a greeting. She didn't answer. Daniel stepped in behind her, offering an awkward smile. He kept his voice down. Traffic from Harrisburg was rough, he said. Sophie shot him a look, and he fell quiet immediately. Emma Turner slipped past both of them. She is 13, tall and gentle, her eyes softer than her mother's ever were at that age. She wrapped her arms around me. "Grandma," she whispered, "I'm sorry in advance." Her voice trembled like she was confessing more than she meant to. Liam, now 17, hovered near the doorway with his hands in his pockets. He tried to meet my eyes, then looked away. "Hey, Grandma," he mumbled. Sophie corrected him automatically. "Say it properly." Liam. He clenched his jaw. "Happy Thanksgiving, Grandma." Relatives from York and Reading crowded the living room, pretending not to notice the tension. Some of them adored Sophie, clinging to her stories about her big promotion at her marketing agency. They laughed loudly at her jokes, nodding like satellites orbiting a single sun. She swept into the kitchen, sniffing the air. "Is that your sweet potatoes again, Mom? You know we can order from the gourmet place downtown. Presentation matters." "It's a family recipe," I said quietly. "Exactly my point," she answered. Emma flinched. Liam walked out to the porch. Daniel tried smoothing things over. "Sophie," he said, "your mom worked hard today." "Oh, please," she snapped. "Hard work is not the same as doing things well." The room felt smaller with every word she spoke. I watched the relatives nod along, eager not to lose favor with her. No one had ever told her no, not for years. The table was set. The food was warm, and every inch of the evening felt ready to break. Somewhere inside me, the dread settled deep. The disaster I feared was already unfolding long before anyone took their seats. We took our seats at the table, and the room settled into a brittle quiet. The turkey sat untouched. The chatter died as if everyone sensed a storm coming. Sophie lifted her wine glass, swirled it once, and smirked. "Let's just get this over with," she said. I tried to steady my breath, but the tension wrapped around my ribs. Across from me, Arthur folded his hands. His jaw tightened in a way I had only seen a handful of times in our 50 years together. The moment Sophie tapped her fork against my sweet potatoes, the entire evening flipped. "Mom," she announced, "I swear you live to embarrass me." Before I could form a word, Arthur stood. His chair scraped loudly against the floor, cutting through every whispered complaint and forced smile around us. "If your mother is a failure," he said, "then I would like you to explain something to all of us." Sophie blinked. "Dad, sit down." He didn't. He leaned forward, voice steady but sharp. "Explain why every debt you created, every single one, was paid by the woman you just humiliated." A ripple moved across the table. Someone gasped. Someone else dropped a fork. "That is not true," Sophie snapped. "Why would you say something like that?" Arthur reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn manila envelope. "Because I kept the records. In case the day came when you decided to rewrite history." Sophie's eyes widened. "What records?" Arthur opened the envelope and slid a stack of papers across the table. "The overdue car loan your mother paid, the credit card balance she cleared when you were drowning in interest, the medical bill you lied about, the mortgage payment you missed twice." I felt my hands shaking. I had never wanted this revealed, not like this. But the truth kept spilling. Arthur looked directly at Sophie. "You almost lost your home 2 times. And your mother saved it." Quietly, without demanding anything, Emma covered her mouth with both hands. A tear slipped down her cheek. "Mom, is that real?" she whispered. Daniel lowered his head, shoulders sagging. He already knew. Shame spread across his face like a fresh bruise. Sophie pushed her chair back, breathing hard. "You are all exaggerating. You do not understand." Arthur cut her off. "We understand perfectly. We finally do." The table remained frozen, heavy with the truth no one could swallow. When the table finally broke apart, relatives scattered like people escaping a fire, I slipped into the kitchen, gripping the counter with both hands until the trembling eased. The air felt heavy, as if every secret I had buried had risen at once. A soft voice broke through behind me. Grandma Emma stood in the doorway, eyes red and swollen. She walked toward me slowly, like she worried I might fall. "Are you okay?" I tried to nod, but the motion felt brittle. "I am fine, sweetheart." She shook her head. "No, you are not." Her voice wavered, and then she blurted, "This is not the first time." "Grandma." I looked at her, unsure what she meant. She swallowed hard. "A few months ago, Mom was talking to her friend Melissa. I heard her say, she said, 'My mother is holding me back. She is useless.'" Emma wiped her eyes quickly. "I did not tell you because I did not want to hurt you." My chest tightened. Hearing it from Sophie hurt every time, but hearing it from her daughter felt deeper, raw. It meant these words had been said casually, maybe often. Emma put her arms around me carefully. I held her, unable to speak. Arthur entered the kitchen then, his face lined with guilt. "Mabel," he said softly, "I should have said something years ago. I thought protecting you meant staying quiet. It is not your fault." I whispered, but he shook his head. Daniel stepped in behind him, rubbing the back of his neck. "Mabel, Sophie is under a lot of pressure. She does not mean everything she says." Arthur turned sharply. "Pressure does not excuse cruelty." Daniel had no answer. Arthur took my hands in his voice barely steady. "We need to talk about you. The biopsy. You postponed it again." Why I blinked. Caught. Sophie needed $3,000 last month. I did not. I did not want to add more stress to her life. Arthur's face crumpled. You put your health aside for someone who cannot even speak to you with basic respect. The truth landed between us with a clarity I could no longer ignore. I had spent years quieting my pain so Sophie could shout hers. And right there, in that kitchen, I knew something had to end. Arthur guided me to the living room like he was afraid I might disappear if he let go. I sank into the couch, my hands still cold from everything that had been said. He sat beside me, the envelope of Sophie's debts resting on his knee like a weight neither of us could ignore anymore. We cannot keep living like this, he said. His voice was calm, but something firm had settled underneath it. You almost missed a biopsy because Sophie needed money. That is not love. Mabel, that is survival. I closed my eyes. She is our daughter, and you are my wife. He answered, You matter too. Before I could speak, there was a knock at the doorway. Our lawyer, David Rhodes, had arrived. Arthur must have called him while I was in the kitchen earlier. David stepped in quietly, setting a folder on the coffee table. I came because Arthur said the situation has escalated. David said gently, I think it is time we talk about protections. I looked up. Protections from our own daughter. David hesitated, choosing his words with care. Protections for your peace, Mrs. Hartman, and for your grandchildren. Arthur nodded. We want to update the will, the house, the pension. The savings, they go straight to Emma and Liam. He took my hand. Sophie gets nothing unless she commits to therapy and repairs the relationship for at least 1 year. I stared at him. The idea felt like pulling a thread from the center of my heart. Arthur, she will see this as betrayal. She already sees anything less than obedience as betrayal. He said softly, This is the first time we are choosing ourselves. David opened his folder and slid out several documents. There is another matter. Something you both should know. I braced myself. He pointed to a highlighted signature. Years ago, Sophie submitted a loan application using your name. The signature does not match your records. It was small, but legally questionable. I never pursued it because you told me to keep the peace. Arthur looked at me in disbelief. She forged your name. My voice barely came out. She said she needed the loan to fix her car. I thought helping her was easier than confronting her. Something shifted in Arthur's expression. Not anger, resolve. He placed his hand over the documents. We are done covering for her. Daniel appeared in the hallway, hesitant. Is this about Sophie? He asked quietly. We are setting boundaries, Arthur replied. Daniel nodded slowly, as if understanding something had finally changed for good. And for the first time in many years, I felt the ground steady beneath me. Sophie's reaction began before the sun came up. My phone lit the entire nightstand, long messages, short messages, voice notes that burned through my speakers. You humiliated me. You let Dad attack me. You have always been jealous of my success. This is emotional manipulation. Each message sounded like a match striking the same stone. I turned the phone face down. An hour later, Arthur walked in holding his own phone. She just left me 9 voicemails. He said, All of them blaming you. That sounds like her, I whispered. By noon, the real storm hit. My cousin Linda called, breathless. Mabel, I am so sorry. Someone recorded the dinner. Arthur's whole speech. Sophie screaming. The clip is on the Lancaster Community Facebook group. My heart clenched. All of it. Every second. People are shocked. They are defending you. I could hear notifications exploding through her phone. Within hours, tens of thousands had watched it. Comments poured in outrage, disbelief. Strangers furious on my behalf. Sophie, the woman who polished her image like a trophy, was suddenly the center of a public fire she could not control. Her rage turned volcanic. She called Arthur first. "You two think this is funny. I have a career." "People know me," he answered calmly. "And now they know how you speak to your mother." That was when the message came from Emma. Just 2 words. We left. Daniel brought the kids to our house that evening. He stood in the doorway, exhausted. She screamed at Emma. He said quietly, "Told her she betrayed her by comforting you." He rubbed his eyes. "I cannot let the kids stay there right now." I pulled Emma into my arms as she cried against my shoulder. Liam stood behind her, jaw tight. The next morning, Sophie's firm issued a statement she was suspended for ethics review. By afternoon, one of her biggest clients terminated their contract, citing unprofessional public conduct. Sophie sent me a final message. One line, "This is all your fault." She had lost her job, her reputation, and her family's respect, and she still could not see the truth, pressing in from every side. 1 year later, our Thanksgiving table was smaller, quieter, and for the first time in decades, peaceful. Arthur carved the turkey while Daniel carried in the mashed potatoes. Emma set out the plates with Liam's help, both of them taller, steadier, older in ways no one their age should have had to become. Emma nudged me. "Sit down, Grandma. You cooked everything. Let us handle it." I did as she said, though it felt strange to be taken care of. When everyone sat, Emma rose from her chair. She held her napkin like it steadied her. "I want to say something before we eat." She looked right at me. "Last year was awful, but you never stopped being kind. If I grow up to be half the woman you are, I will be proud." Her voice cracked. Liam reached for her hand. Daniel wiped his eyes. Arthur touched my shoulder, the gesture soft and warm. "I love you, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into a hug. "You and your brother saved me more than you know." We had barely lifted our forks when a pounding hit the front door, 3 hard knocks that cut through the room like a blade. Arthur's hand froze midair. Daniel's expression shifted. I stood slowly. Sophie stood on the porch, eyes red, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Mom." She choked. "Let me in. We need to talk." "You ruined everything. This is your fault." Her voice trembled. But it wasn't sorrow. It was fury trying to look like grief. I stepped outside, closing the door halfway behind me. "Sophie," I said gently, "you are hurting, but I did not do this to you." She shook her head violently. "You turned everyone against me. You let that video spread. You made Dad expose me." I met her eyes. "The world did not punish you. Your own choices did." She stared at me, stunned into silence. It was the first time I had said it, without fear, without apology. "I am not opening that door today," I said softly. "Not until you learn how to speak without breaking the people who love you." "Mama," she whispered. I stepped back inside and closed the door. Not cruelly, just finally. Inside, Emma slipped her hand into mine. "Grandma," she whispered, "thank you for choosing us." I exhaled, feeling something inside me settle for the first time in years. If you felt this story, take a second to leave a comment about where you're listening from, and subscribe for more stories like this. When you stop giving your heart to someone who only wounds it, is that failure? Or is it finally freedom?